Welcome back and welcome to CM481 week 12. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're making our way through this online school stuff. Hopefully, you guys are staying on track with your assignments and your quizzes and getting your construction industry seminars in. I really hope you're staying on track with that. If you're not, then call me, see what we can do. I'll help you figure this out, but I don't want you to be falling behind and not passing this class just because it's online and it's a little bit harder to keep track of. So definitely stay on track. Okay, can you all do that for me? All right. So last week we talked about quality and we talked about what the definition of quality was. Remember, we talked about how quality is meeting or exceeding the customer's expectations. And also during that very short lecture that I gave you, talked about how lean construction was part of a quality management plan. And so I mentioned this week we're going to talk about lean construction and how that applies to superintendents. And I think it's really important because when we talk about quality, remember, I said the superintendent is the first line of defense. And so lean construction being all about quality on a job, how does that apply to superintendent? For those of you who took 489 with me, we talked about lean construction and how that applied to project managers. But in here, I'd like to talk about how it applies to superintendents. But first, I know not everybody has taken 489, so not everybody has gotten an introduction to lean construction. So I definitely want to take an opportunity to introduce you to lean construction. And so I'm going to share my screen here and we're going to talk like this again. And so this is lean for superintendents. Once again, I'm going to make this real brief, but there's a concept in here that I think is going to be important, not just for future superintendents, but for all of you who are going into the construction industry. So please pay attention. This is good stuff. And so lean construction, what do we want on our job sites? Lower costs, better schedules, better quality, improved project team environment. Would you all agree with me that these are important things for our job sites, for our construction projects? And so lean construction is all about making these things better, meeting these things, lowering the costs, bettering our schedules, bettering our quality, and having a great team environment. The definition of lean is decreasing waste while increasing value. Minimize waste, maximize value. If you don't remember anything about lean, remember these two things. This is your definition of lean construction. Minimizing waste, maximizing value. Two things, okay? So when you're in an interview and somebody says, do you know about lean construction? I say, heck yeah, I know about lean construction. It's minimizing waste and maximizing value. You'll sound like an expert. So you're welcome. Anyways, so moving on, what is value? We also talked about this, and this is where a lot of people get hung up on what is value in construction. Because a lot of times what I tell people and what I tell project managers and superintendents is that their job is not valuable. Now, that's not what I mean by that. Obviously, you provide value to a job. But when we talk about value-added activities in construction, we are talking about putting a nail into a board that holds a building together. We're talking about installation of materials. So that is valuable. If a owner could build a job without hiring a superintendent and paying a superintendent to do it, they would. If an owner could build a job without a project manager, they would, because that would save them money. We're just overhead. So actual value-added items, bolting steel members into place, pouring concrete, framing and painting walls, that's value added. What we are is incidental support activities, which are non-value added activities. So things like producing drawings. If we could build a job without having to pay somebody to produce drawings, an owner would do that. Ordering and invoice processing, reports, hoisting and positioning of steel, even that can be considered an incidental support activity. Concrete forms. If we could build a job without having to set the forms for the concrete and just have the concrete be in place, that would be much better. We wouldn't have to pay for those forms. So 3D printing concrete, you may have seen some of those videos. That is value added because we don't have to do forms. Okay, so those are non-value added activities. They're support activities. They're necessary. Right now, they're necessary. Maybe someday they won't be necessary. But right now, they're necessary activities, but they're not value added. They're not putting materials in place. And then waste, okay? Waiting for information and decisions. Design and field rework. Ineffective meetings. Oh, man. Definitely been a part of a few of those. You might be thinking right now, oh, this is ineffective. What are you wasting my time for? But it's not, okay? Storing and moving materials. All of those things are waste. And so when we talk about minimizing waste and maximizing value, we are talking about minimizing, waiting for information. And so let me show you some types of waste. And the way you can remember this is downtime. Okay, so the first being defects in rework, fixing mistakes, overproduction, making more just in case, waiting. So obviously waiting, delay for an upstream activity to complete, is not utilizing talent. The T is transportation. So what we mean by this is unnecessary material movement. When we're having to move material from one place to another, we do that with stockpiles of soil all the time on job sites, and it's waste. Inventory, your Q, excessive work in process inventory. Okay, so having excessive inventory. And then motion, unnecessary movement. So moving around the job site. So if we need to move from here to here to get it done, what if we move from here to here to get it done? So if we can shorten that motion. And then excess processing. Too many reports, too many signatures, red tape is what this is. So excess processing. So these are types of waste that we can get rid of on a job site, which maximizes value. Anytime we minimize the waste, we maximize the value. So this, you may have seen before, is early collaboration. So the impact on the money on the job, so the impact on our budget versus time. So if we get involved in a process early, so on time, so to the left side of this diagram, if we get involved in a project early, the things we can do for the job impact the budget significantly. Where as time rolls on, the things that we do in the job impact the budget less and less and less. If we're halfway through a project and we have to, and we come up with a great idea, but it requires a redesign, the redesign costs money. And rework with all of the subcontractors costs money. So the impact to our budget is minimal. Where if we had come up with that in the very beginning of the project, the impact to the budget would have been a lot greater. Okay, so lean is all about early collaboration. So getting involved early in the project. Where's the superintendent role in this? Superintendent has a big role in this. They are doing constructability reviews. So making sure that this thing can actually be built the way it's being designed. And if it can't be, the superintendent's raising their hand and saying, hey, I don't think we can do it this way. We need to change this before we buy it out, before we have to rework it, before we get on site and figure out we actually can't build this thing. We need to redesign it right now. Okay, so superintendent's role in this is big. The last planner system. So I'm going to have you guys in your homework assignment research some of the last planner system. So you'll see that in your homework assignment. But the last planner system, when we talk about the last planner system, the last planner is the person on the job who's the last person to plan to put it in place. And so usually that is like a foreman level, not even a superintendent level, but the foreman on the job site who are actually putting the material in place. That's the last planner. We're the planner a couple plans back from the last planner. The last planner is the person who's actually going to be putting that work into place. And so the last planner system has everything to do with getting them involved in making the decisions that affect the job. Okay. This is where the rubber meets the road with lean construction as a superintendent. Superintendent's main role with lean construction is right here in this last planner system. So what we're talking about with the last planner is this is a system of interrelated techniques that's combined to get buy-in from the last planners, from those foremen on the job. It's designed to get their buy-in so that we can get the work completed when promised. Is that not what we want to do? Is get the work completed when it's promised to be completed? So how much work do you think happens on time on a job site? Think about it for a minute. While I'm talking, think about how much work do you think happens on time on a job site? Like when it was planned for. It's not a very high percentage. It's actually about 52% is the most recent figures that I've heard. 52% of the job actually happens on time when it was planned for. That's not very high. We've got to think about that as superintendents because it's our job to make sure that things happen on time when they were planned for. And only 52% of that's happening. You know, if anybody else only did 50% of their job, they probably wouldn't have a job for very long. They probably would be fired. But we're doing 52%, so we're good. Which way do you think a crew will be more productive? This is kind of a rhetorical question. Doing work as planned or doing unplanned work? Obviously, crews are going to be more productive if they're doing the work as it was planned to be done. Once we start having to like move things around, change things up, do unplanned work, that's going to affect our productivity. Okay, so here's this thing that I told you I want you to take notes on. It's going to make a difference, not only in this class, not only as a superintendent, but in your whole career. This is an extremely important concept. Okay? And this is what we call should, can, will. Should, can, will. And it plays right into the last planner system. This circle right here is our should circle. Okay? So how do we come up with what we should do on the job? Okay, well, when I want to know what I should do on a job, I go look at my schedule. And I say, what should we be doing today? And I read what my schedule says. And so when we talk about our should, we talk about our master schedule. This is the schedule that probably the project manager came up with early on in the project, our master schedule. This next circle is our can circle. Now, there's plenty of things that we should be doing that we can't be doing. Okay? We're looking at our schedule, what we should be doing, and we're trying to figure out if we can do it. Shouldn't a superintendent be figuring out if the work can be done. Like, is there anything standing in our way that could prevent us from doing this work? Can that work be done? They're looking for constraints. A superintendent should be looking for constraints on a job. And so how do we do this? How does a superintendent do this with lean construction in the last planner system? They do a pull plan session and a constraint analysis. So to get from our master schedule to our detailed schedule, we do a pull plan session. Okay, and this is going to be part of your homework to look up what a pull plan session is and explain to me how this can ultimately remove constraints. So we take our pull plan session. Listen to me. We take our pull plan session, which is our detailed schedule now, and we look at the next 6 weeks of activities and we do a constraint analysis. We say, is there anything preventing me from doing that activity? Is there anything preventing me from doing this activity? Like, is there not submittals that are approved for that activity? Or maybe there's an outstanding RFI on that activity. Or maybe the plans don't really tell us very well how to do that activity. Or maybe we don't have the subcontractor bought out yet for that activity. All of those things could be constraints for getting that work done. Also, is there something standing in the way of that subcontractor actually doing that work? You know, if we need to dig footings, but first we need to demo a building, we need to demo the building first before we can do the footings. So there might be a constraint in the way. Okay, so this should circle is our master schedule. The can circle is removing the constraints. And we do that with a pull plan session and a constraint analysis. This third circle is the will circle. Okay, so should, can, will. Now, we can have everything listed in our master schedule. We should be doing it. We can have all of the constraints removed from that activity. We can do that activity. But there's one more thing that we need in order to do this activity. We need somebody's commitment to actually do the activity. Will a subcontractor do that activity? Will they actually commit to doing it? And so this is a subcontractor commitment to do the work. And how do we do this with the last planner? We do it with a weekly work plan. So I'm going to ask you to figure out what a weekly work plan is and how we do that. But when you have something in your master schedule and you have all of the constraints removed and you have subcontractor commitment to do this, where all those three things combine, that's our did. Should, can, will, did. Okay? This is where we get that 52% of stuff that's done as per plan. Okay? We want to squish all of these circles together as much as we possibly can. So what's in the middle is bigger because we want that 52% to be 60, 70, 80, 90%. We want work to happen as planned. And so why is this important for more than the superintendent? Because at all times in the construction process, we should be looking at what's on our schedule. We should be looking at whether we can do it, and we should be trying to get subcontractor commitment to do it. Whether you're a project manager, whether you're an executive, whether you're a superintendent, whether you're a field engineer, whether you're a project engineer, you should always be looking to squeeze these circles together however you can, by getting subcontractor commitment, by removing constraints, by making sure we're doing work that's on the schedule. All of these things are going to improve your career. And so what is this area of the circle? So we've got the item on our master schedule. We've removed all of the constraints. but we don't have subcontractor commitment. So what this is the lack of commitment from our subcontractor. We don't have the will circle. How many times have we been on a job site and it was on our master schedule and we'd removed all the constraints? It could be done, but subcontractor was nowhere to be found. Oh, I'll be there tomorrow. Not there tomorrow. I'll be there tomorrow. I got held up on another job. Not there the next day. Okay? No commitment from the subcontractors. Work doesn't get done. About this section. So we've got all of the constraints removed from the activity. We've got subcontractor commitment to do it, but it's not on our master schedule. This is unplanned work. It's out of sequence work. It's not scheduled. Okay, so yeah, the work is getting done, but if we're doing work that's out of sequence, not on our schedule, then what we're doing is probably holding up other things that might be on our schedule, that might be critical path that we should be doing, and get it? Should be doing. Instead, we're doing this unsequenced work. Okay, so this section, it's on our master schedule. We've got subcontractor commitment. The subcontractor's there, ready to go, ready to do it. It's on the schedule. You scheduled him there, but somebody didn't do their job. And there's roadblocks. There's a constraint. And that constraint is preventing them from doing the work. Chances are it was the superintendent that didn't remove those constraints. The superintendent should always be looking 6 weeks out to remove constraints. So what do we want? What do we want this chart to look like? This is what we want it to look like. 100%. Will it ever look like this? Probably not, unless you're on a fairly small project. But this is our goal. Our goal is to squeeze all of those circles together. If you can do this as a superintendent, you are going to be successful. If you can do this as a project manager, you are going to be successful. Okay? This should be your goal. Always to squeeze these circles together. And make sure you're doing work that's on the schedule. Make sure you're doing all of the constraint removal, making sure that these things can be done, and then somehow, in some way, getting subcontractor buy-in so that they're committed to be there on the job site doing their job. If you can do that, you will be extremely successful in this industry. Get back to this. I think that concept, while being extremely simple, is probably one of the most important concepts that you can take away from this class and from any class, really, because all of our classes play into this. All of our classes play into how you manage subcontractors, how you manage budgets, how you make sure that there's no constraints. I mean, even estimating, okay? Let's talk about estimating. That can be a constraint. If you do not have the costs figured out, you're not gonna have the subcontractor bought out, and that is going to be a constraint to the work actually being done. So everything we learn about in this program plays into how we can get all of those circles to get closer and closer together. If we can, raise that work from 52% being done as planned to say 60%, 70%, even 75%, that's going to be a huge improvement on the average job that's out there where they're only getting 52% of the work done as planned. It's a very important concept for you. So make sure you look at the assignment, because your assignment has to do with these concepts. And I want you to do a little bit more research on your own about the last planner system, about poll planning, about constraint analysis, and about weekly work plans. And you're going to write about this. So hopefully this has been beneficial for you. As always, if you have any questions, call me, email me, whatever you need. I'm here for you. Okay, guys? If anything's going on, just let me know. Okay? So, hope you're having a great week. Stay well, and talk to you